Hello, everyone. Happy Father's Day and welcome to the annual celebration of Hartford Dismas House. Somehow we got it into our heads, our collective consciousness that
Bobby, are you on mute?
I am not on mute.
No, I can hear him.
Shall I keep going, Jen?
Yes, please.
Okay. I feel like I have to start all over again. So that somehow we got it into our head, our collective consciousness, that isolating and separating and stigmatizing and punishing was an effective way to create change for people who have in fact, it is an effective way to create change. It's just not an effective way to create positive change. Dismas of Vermont has recognized for 35 years that support and community and housing and love are far more powerful forces for positive change than is punishment. I'm Bobby Sand. I am the former Windsor County State's Attorney, the DA, now a professor at Vermont Law School, where I and others started the Center for Justice Reform with the first in the nation Master of Arts in Restorative Justice, a degree we affectionately call the MARJ. It is an incredible honor to host this event. And I know that we are in for a treat this evening. The event is being recorded, as I think we have heard. I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Mascoma Bank for sponsoring this evening. Restorative justice asks a different set of questions than are typically asked in the criminal legal system. RJ asks not what law was broken, but who was harmed. Not what should the government impose, but what does the harmed party need? Not how do we extract something from a responsible party, but how do they make amends for the harm that was caused? And how can the response strengthen relationships, community, and lead to healing rather than the infliction of more pain? So Hartford Dismas House hosted a really excellent speaker series on restorative justice. And I was very fortunate to kick that off. Other speakers included Vermont Attorney General T.J. Donovan, former Chief Public Defender in Chittenden County, Jessica Brown, now a colleague at Vermont Law School, filmmaker extraordinaire Bess O'Brien, and University of Vermont professor Alec Ewald. Those recordings, those presentations, most of them are recorded and available on the Hartford Dismas House website. Please click on those and listen. You might also find a link there as well to support Hartford Dismas House as you have already, so please continue to do so. Thanks to everyone who supported the RJ Speaker Series. Special thank you to Jen Rataj for her excellent Zoom work during that whole series. So tonight at this annual celebration, I know that there will be some insight, there'll be some poignancy, I suspect there'll be some humor, some culture, and some art. And so to kick things off some more, I would like to turn over the microphone to the House Manager of Hartford Dismas House, Jeff Backus.
Thanks, Bobby. And to echo what you said, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. So the mission of Dismas House, what we strive to do is take people from incarceration and reintegrate them back into the community so they may have long-term success. And one of the ways we measure this is when they leave here, do they move on to independent living, or do they have their own income, housing, and just completely independent and doing well? People know me well, know that I'm very competitive and I want to be the best house. So I have a whiteboard on my wall and I have a list of everybody within the last year, successes, people who moved out successfully to their own housing. And then I have failures, people left on other terms. And I was reading over my list of failures fairly recently, actually. And I was looking at all the names and all these people that I had come to this house that I classified as a failure. I have positive stories with them. I remember going hiking with Jamie, buying Brian a nightlight and a fan because he couldn't adjust getting out of jail, playing paintball with Kyle, catching a northern pike with Sean, decorating for this past Anthony. All these positive things going on, just interpersonal between me and them. And then all the countless conversations that we had in between at our community dinners and just one-on-one, just as a community. And I realized the fault in my thinking. I have since changed it to successes and not yet, because I didn't quite grasp the fact that there's still people doing the best they can. And even though they don't meet the success the first time around, they still made positive steps towards that reconciliation process, towards the next level of their lives. They're not going to start from fresh. They know they have community connections with us and the greater community around us. And I think it's a real incredible thing. So I guess to revise what I think success is for this house is that if we can help spread awareness in how I see people as just people who make mistakes and they're still trying to improve. And if we can spread that awareness throughout the community around us, that would be a success for us. So next we have an interview with one of our most beloved past residents, Seth Osgood, and he's gonna share his story of what his time was like here at Dismas.
I never felt like life was a failure for me. I just knew that I had gotten severely depressed and way off in left field. Living here made me realize that, there's a finite amount of time on this planet for sure. I was a resident here for 2.5 years back in 2015 to 2018. And I was arrested for domestic assault and violating restraining orders. Just having a mess of a time. I was drinking vodka pretty much every day and, going through some opiate problems and basically any prescription pills, or I guess by then I had graduated to primarily heroin at that point. And then alcohol when I didn't have any, so that was a brew for the storm that was coming. And then one night me and my ex-wife had a fight that got completely out of control, and I wound up in jail for 6 months, got back out, violated probation, ended up on furlough. And at that point, I was like, well, maybe I need a break because what I am doing is clearly not working. I was fortunate, I was in my late 30s and was tired and, I just needed somebody to shake me. That happened pretty much here. I had absurd levels of anger. I was pissed about everything. Definitely talking with the director at the time and just getting sort of advice as to what the next possible steps are, not, forced in any one direction, but to have somebody help you frickin' slow down and stop being your own worst enemy. Because, largely, in my experience, especially in this environment, we are our own worst enemies, the know-it-all syndrome that everyone has. I just thought youth was behind me and whatever I was gonna do had already passed me by. And then you just start to see like volunteers coming through here who are happy, every time you see them. You're in an environment where everybody's just giving time, it's not stuff you're not, I wasn't used to. Most people are take, what can I, and that's not happening here. I know that things take time, and this gave me the appropriate amount of time. You know, I was so lost that I knew 6 months wasn't gonna be enough time. A year in, I was still like, man, I ain't ready. So it gave me the appropriate amount of time because I needed a lot of time. I was super lost, like without a doubt. I mean, to the point where I just threw my hands up and said, show me something. Whatever, what do you got? Trying this was the best thing that happened after my implosion. This was definitely the start that I needed to, you know, stop bullshitting myself. The first thing that you need to do if you're gonna, in my opinion, you know, right your ship is to get out of your comfort zone. As soon as you sign the lease in this place, you are out of your comfort zone. You know, you're gonna be in a collection of people who all kind of get it on some level together. And then you're gonna be able to see what unconditional community is on some level. Because it's not everyone in the community, but there is a fair amount of people out here who actually care how strangers are doing, which is shocking for some, because, you know, that just seems like some sort of fantasy Disney-like thing, you know, but it's real. And take the time that you need. I mean, if you think you're just gonna walk in and do the smash course and be cured, I mean, it's an opportunity to literally change your life, you know, for better. Because you need to redesign yourself. Do you need to adhere to everything that everyone says in any environment? Absolutely not, I don't think. But this will give you a lot of positive things to sift through and figure out what will work for you, what does work for you, what maybe captures your imagination to move forward. Whatever that may be. But it's definitely the opportunity that people need to move forward. It was for me, which is even hard to say now, because at first it was probably the last thing I wanted to do, but the thing I needed to do.
A special thank you to Seth Osgood for that video. I love the video. He really articulated the Dismas experience much better than I ever could. And now I'm going to turn it over to Bartlett for the next part of our program.
Thanks, Jeff. I think that Seth really underscored that Hartford Dismas House thrives because of community support. And that support comes in so many ways. Our volunteer cooks, our shared dinners, our donors, our council members, and importantly, folks like you who are investing your Sunday evening on Father's Day, learning about us and our mission of reconciliation. As the current chair of the Hartford Dismas House Council, I'm honored to announce 2 awards that recognize 2 extraordinary individuals who exemplify the spirit of our community. For brevity's sake, we have detailed all the information about the awards and the recipients, but I have a little more that I'm going to add anyway. They're in your program. I'm sorry, take what that Jen posted in the chat. Bobby Sand, founder of the Center for Justice Reform at the Vermont Law School, advocate, teacher, and guru of the principles of restorative justice and our MC, is awarded the Father Jack Hickey Award. His work has done so much to educate our community and support our residents. Thank you, Bobby. And Sue Buckholz, who happens to be here, is awarded the Jonathan Sylvia Award, celebrating the spirit of volunteerism. It's not a surprise. Sue stepped up to the plate when Hartford Dismas House was first proposed here in the Upper Valley. And as is her wont, she swung hard. She's still swinging on the Dismas, and she's sits on the Dismas of Vermont board. Thank you, Sue. Miranda Thomas has made 2 wonderful plates featuring a dove. That will be our small token to each of Bobby and Sue to thank them for their service. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now back to the program.
And where exactly is Sue?
Sure.
Okay, there we go. So I know we're both really, really touched and honored by this recognition. So thank you so much to all who played a role. I will say some people have a certain aptitude at designing systems and programs, and maybe I have that. Other people are doing the day-to-day direct service work, and for me, they are really, really the heroes. So I celebrate them. Folks, it is time for, I don't know, maybe we could call this the main event, but we are really, really fortunate to have Sister Helen Prejean here with us. And in thinking about introducing her, I certainly want to say that she is a remarkable person, an international leader in the fight against the death penalty. She's the author of 3 books. One of them is Dead Man Walking, made into a feature film, made into a play, and as we will learn in a little while, also made into an opera. She has spoken all over the country and all over the world. And while she is most typically described as a death penalty opponent, I actually think it might be more accurate to say that she is a leading proponent of the dignity and worth of all people, even those who have caused harm. And so it is a great honor to turn over the microphone to one of humanity's greatest proponents, Sister Helen Prejean.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So happy to be here. You know, Dismas is one of my very favorite groups in the world, because what's better than being part of something to help our fellow human beings get a leg up? I mean, I don't know, was it Dickens or Tolstoy that said nobody wants to read about happy families like all alike, but we want to read about the family that was up against it and then overcame it. And that's the deep interest in Dismas House, because it's reaching out to people, to our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters who have made a mistake, but then who are being restored back to life and taking charge of their lives again. And they show us, I think we need Dismas House as much as Dismas House needs us as volunteers and all these good things, because most of us have come up in such privilege. I'm not saying we haven't had our difficulties in life. Maybe we didn't get along with our mama, maybe our daddy was overbearing. Everybody's got their little story, right? But not like those who have come from situations where when the main economy is not working for you, you turn to drugs as a sub-economy, where you can try to get an education and you're about to graduate from public school, you can't read a daggone 3rd grade reader, where you don't have resources or inherited wealth coming down the family because of sheer racism that has kept, you know, your people back after generation after generation after generation. I mean, we may know a little hardship, but we don't know anything like what people experience. And then the experience of prison is they put handcuffs behind your back. You begin to experience helplessness. You're locked in cells where you never touch a doorknob and have access. You know, Jesus talked in the gospel about sheep come and go. They have freedom of access. There's no freedom to come and go. You do everything in the presence of God. You are counted 4 times a day. You spend your life, half of it, waiting in line to be counted again to make sure you don't escape. You're not called by your first name. You're called by a number or by your last name. So many signals you get that you are nothing more than disposable human waste. And maybe one of the biggest struggles is you actually feel that way about yourself. Look what I did, I messed up. Like my daddy said, I was always gonna mess up. I hear that script in my head, you're never gonna amount to anything, and then I show it. I prove it right. Look what I did. You have all of that inside you. And then you have a chance. You see that calligraphy behind me there? It's from Seoul, South Korea. And when I visited there, we were working with the Catholic bishops of South Korea to end the death penalty there. A famous calligrapher in the city asked me what was my favorite scripture quote. And he said, I'll do that for you in calligraphy. And that's what that is. It's written in Korean, and it's the words of Jesus in John 10. I've come that you may have life to the full. It's interesting that in all the Gospels, even in all the Gnostic Gospels, the other Gospels that didn't make it into the canon of the Gospels, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Peter, Jesus never once called himself a savior. He said he was all about life, to really live, to really be alive. And our prisons are so much about death, or small deaths. I woke up by the grace of God, and I was a slow learner, to wake up to the gospel, that it meant more than just being charitable to people around me, praying for the poor people of the world, praying for the homeless. Catholic nun, hey, I'm a good person. Look, I'm a nun, right? We're brides of Christ. We're special. People come to us and say, sister, pray for me. I know your prayers mean much more than mine did. None of that's true. We're not any special people. We're people who've been graced to be educated. And so in this book that I just wrote called River Fire, I talk about the whole journey of waking up out of the privilege, out of the suburbs, out of everything being given to me, including as a nun. I was educated, given a job. Hey, you're gonna be a teacher, wanted to be a teacher. And that waking up that the gospel, like I love it, that Pope Francis says what it's about really to be a Christian is to be a field hospital out where the people are wounded and hurting. It's not so much about getting people to believe all the dogmas, orthodoxy. It's about orthopraxy, to be there where it counts. And that's what Dismas House is, right where it counts. Someone stepping out of prison and into community, out of the isolation where you're always having to watch your back, you're always having to protect yourself. A good friend of mine, Tim Robbins, has started this prison drama course. And they're doing it throughout California. The California legislature even mandated money for it because they could see the change in people in prison. And drama, I always thought of drama as kind of like a nice entertainment thing. You go to a play, you look at a movie, but what Tim Robbins and his group have done with people, first, it's to connect people in prison and community. That, hey, we're in this play together. I got to listen and work with you. And another thing that it's done is to help people in prison be in touch with all of the emotions that make us human. Because one of the things that happens is, because of what's happened to people, the only emotion, the main emotion, the main way of communicating is aggression and anger. But then through this course in drama, to be in touch with the grieving, to be in touch with the sadness, to be in touch with the joy, to be in touch with the gratitude, to be in touch with the loving and the longing for love and connection, to come alive through drama. And what I love about Dismas House is, this is what maybe happened to you when you were a kid, led you to do what you did, and then you put in a place where you were lucky if you could get any word of encouragement, like, hey man, I believe in you, or hey, you can do this, into the arms of Dismas House. I love how Dismas House is started. And this is early on when I met Rita McCaffrey and her husband, Mac. Deep friendship. It's why I'm here. I bet we all could just say why we're here. It has a lot to do with Rita McCaffrey coming after us in some way or another, like the hound to heaven, good way. Met them, saw what they were doing. The first one they began with Jack Hickey. You want to hear the most unreal idea in the whole world? Would be a priest who's a chaplain in a prison and with college students at Vanderbilt, and says, hey, I got an idea. Let's start a house where students who want to know what it is to live the gospel, going to Vanderbilt, no less, and people getting out of prison could live in a house together and could be community together, and the students could learn from the guys coming out, and the guys could be learning from the students, and you could be community together. Is that not the most unreal thing you have ever heard in your life? Sounds like a Far Side cartoon where they have disaster waiting to happen. I mean, you know, how could that possibly succeed? Well, it has, because you have committed people like Rita, all of you on the council, all the volunteers that go to Dismas House, where it's restoring it to life. To sit around, and what I love the best, you sit around the table and you have a meal together. There is nothing that distinguished Jesus more than sitting around the table and eating with people. And what distinguished him the most from those who called themselves the religious authorities of the day, where all the rules were about purity. Who you eat with, who you touch, who you meet with, who gets to come into the temple. And Jesus eats with everybody and invites them, and all of his parables are all about that. Eat together, be human together. And then, as Seth said in his video so beautifully, seeing all the volunteers coming in, it was giving. It was giving. And we used to take, watch your back. They're going to do you in. Don't trust. To build trust, to build love, to build community. And I just want to really, if there's one thing I say today, maybe this is the most important thing I want to say, is that we look at the guys and we see them coming to life again and taking responsibility, maybe failing along the way. I love this place called Rocca in Massachusetts. It's in Revere Beach, and it's for gang members that they invite in to get a new start at their life. And when they explained the program to me, they said, we expect them to fail. Well, a lot of programs are set up, oh, look, we educated them. We gave them an example of an experience of community. We helped them get therapy to deal with their wounds. They left and they failed. Well, in their program, they expect failure. I mean, I gotta ask each of us, who ever did it right the first time after we had made a mistake? And just think of our early days in college, trying to find our way, flunking out of course. Who ever gets it right the first time? And what I love about what Jeff said, what success means, you're in there. We're in there for the whole journey together. Yeah, we're gonna fail. And the volunteers, they're gonna get tired. Some of them are gonna quit too. I had enough of this volunteerism. I'm tired of cooking all the potato, the spaghetti, whatever it is they fix. I know it's not gonna be much Cajun food because y'all would have to be in New Orleans to be able to do that, but you can't have everything. And so I'm gonna tell you, when I wrote that book, Dead Man Walking, I had never written a book in my life. I had no idea. I put that little book out there, trusting God's grace would take it, where it needed to go. And kaboom, I mean, that book, it was published in 93 in hardback. It was published in paperback in 94. Susan Sarandon read it in 1994, pestered Tim Robbins, her partner, for 9 months till he read the book and did the movie. He probably made the blooming movie for domestic tranquility. She pestered him. She had that Rita McCaffrey spirit that we got to get this done. We're going to do whatever we need to do to get it done. And boom, the movie comes out and it gets 4 nominations for Academy Awards, and Susan gets the Oscar for her portrayal of a nun. Of all people, believe me, she had never been a nun in a movie before, and she's never been a nun in a movie since. And 1.3 billion people in the world are looking at the Academy Awards that night, and it gets the book out up to the bestseller list, New York Times, and people read the blooming book. And the gift of a book, as I found out, was we're quiet when we read a book. We're not debating anybody. And we're using our imagination, and Dead Man Walking takes you into the suffering of the victim's family who had their teenage kids killed and left dying in a sugarcane field, and to the person who did the killing, and then the journey of the person to execution, and then through the book. Imagination's a powerful thing. Read and go into the execution chamber with me and witness with me the person being executed saying to me the last words of life, because I've become like a symbol. I love you. I have been with 6 people who've been executed, and all of them, their last words are about love. And this great tragedy of our society that we feel we have to kill people to do justice, or the huge penal system, 2.3 million people in prison. It's called the 4th city. People imprisoned are as big as the 4th largest city in the United States. And then there's Dismas. There's hope. There it is. Don't we all, when we look out at the garden after the seed was planted and we look for that first little green sprout coming out of that dark earth, don't we love the story of maybe like it's an Olympic race or just a race, and the kid that has the prosthesis that's going to get in that race, don't we follow that kid more than any other kid in the race? Because there's something in us as human beings that connects with each other in a deep compassion that there, but for the grace of God, I got my 2 legs and I can run. But look at you, you're running and you got a prosthesis and you got a leg that's not even your own, and you're going to be in this race. And I just want to say, I know the people who come out of prison need us. They need Dismas houses. But I wonder if there's a part of us that really doesn't need you more. Those of you who go through the program at Dismas, and restore our hope in us, that we can all make something of our lives, that God's grace can do amazing things in us. I experienced that there was that book written by a nun, never written a book before. God has taken that book. And there's the play that schools can do of Dead Man Walking. And there's an opera. It's going to be at the New York Met in 2023. Rita, you got to come. You got to come with me. You got to go to that opera together. And the aria for my person, who's Sister Helen, is My Journey, which I think if I got the program right tonight and I'm with the program, we're going to get to hear it perform tonight. So let me just express the privilege. Jesus said, blessed are the eyes that see what you see, and ears that hear what you hear, because there's a bit of the kingdom that's in this Dismas event tonight. And we have been blessed to be awake enough to participate. And I want to say to anybody who's a donor, anybody who knows what Dismas House needs, to talk to other people, to increase the funds, to pour it in there. because we don't always have a society or a system in our society that does this. If anything, you got to keep fighting for the funds to keep the community dimension in Dismas House and not just have people sent to individual apartments where they're going to be in isolation and have to get up in the morning and try to do it without the help of community. And we can't do that without resources and funds. I really believe in asking people, if you're awake and you got resources, double what you're doing. Get 3 friends to contribute to Dismas House, because it's the only way that we make it. But that's the way Jesus said the kingdom of God works. People open up their hearts and do it out of love. And the kingdom of God grows, sometimes in spite of us, a lot of times even because of us, but definitely when we do it together. So Rita McCaffrey, the council, all of you, thank you for letting me be a part of this tonight. It's one of my greatest joys. Maybe you could kind of pick that up.
Sister Helen, I don't think you were allowed to make the host tear up, but you managed to do that. But thank you so much. Would you be willing to entertain some questions if people posted them into the chat?
Of course, of course.
All right, and hopefully Jen will have everyone who's here this evening is invited. If you have a question, please post it in the chat. Okay, here's a great question. How do you not get burned out?
That maybe is one of the questions I'm asked the most, and I'm going to tell you, it is so simple. I stay close to people in prison, and I keep seeing the suffering, and I have a moral imperative, a fire in me. That's why I put River of Fire. That I know I've been brought in as a witness, and I got to keep telling this story. Every time I walk out after visiting with Manuel Ortiz on death row here in Louisiana, he's going on 30 years in that cell, and he's innocent. I've been with 7 people on death row. 3 of the 7 have been innocent. That's how broken it is. So I don't have the luxury in me to say, I think I want to do something else. Every time I drive out of that prison, that fire. And also because I meet people like you. And I've kind of experienced the American public. I've been in every city, I don't know how many times, that there's goodness in people. They just didn't know it was that bad. They didn't know how broken it was. They thought, well, we got to fight fire with fire. Of course, we got to throw away these people, throw away the key. We got to lock them up. We got to separate them, because they weren't given a chance ever to meet them. And they were made to be so afraid. And when people are made to be afraid, and then they're separated from seeing what actually happens to people, that's how these things can continue in our society. And I'm a living witness. And I mean, I'm not extending all my energy on you today and I'm gonna walk away tired. It's a mutually enhancing thing to be with you tonight. That's how I keep going.
I loved your earlier comment about how we might need Dismas more than the people who are residents there. And that really resonated with me. So your work almost necessarily has some political implications. So we have a question in the chat inquiring whether you are meeting with Attorney General Merrick Garland, presumably to discuss punishment in this country.
As soon as he got appointed, I got a phone call from Merrick Garland. He said, Sister Helen, can you help me? No, it doesn't work like that. You don't go to the top of the ladder. I'm with all the little Merrick Garlands. And Jesus talked about, and I love this psalm that says, truth springs up from the ground. I'm with the citizens and people on the ground, changing consciousness about the death penalty and the need for penal reform. And you can see there is change happening in the country. Look at Virginia, that just ended the death penalty. Black Lives Matter happened. Confederate statues start coming down. And you have DAs, two prominent ones that ran for district attorney and were not for the death penalty. So as the people grow in consciousness, the leaders or those who are in charge of the system grow in consciousness too. Look at you, Bobby. I mean, you were starting restorative justice in the law school, people like you, all of us. That's how it happened. So Merrick Garland hadn't called me yet, and he probably won't. And I don't care that he doesn't. But what I do care about, it's the first time we had a presidential election where candidate Biden said, I'm against the death penalty and I'm going to bring it down. And he was elected by the people. And we can see that beginning to happen. But right, not just the death penalty, penal reform. Have you noticed the shift in language away from politicians saying tough on crime, that eye for an eye thing, we're going to throw you away forever, to smart on crime? Because the consciousness shifts in the people. And Jesus, actually in the Catholic Church, Vatican II, the Reformed Council of the Catholic Church, for the first time, defined the church, not as the bishops and all the hierarchy, but the people. It's the people. And we, the people, same thing true of a democracy. We, the people, we wake up, we change things.
So that is a perfect segue to the next question, which is, should our efforts be directed towards system reform, or should they be directed toward working directly with individuals who are incarcerated?
Not an either or question, folks. We always need the personal contact. We always need. You saw the 2-mile lines of cars in Dallas, Texas, waiting to get food during the pandemic. We are always going to need the immediacy of reaching out to each other where the need is so dire. We will always need that. But when I walked out of that execution chamber that night, having watched the person deliberately put to death, rendered defenseless and put to death, I couldn't just say, well, I'm going to just kind of keep going and visiting and helping people die, well, maybe calmly and all. You got to tackle the system. The Gregg decision that put the death penalty back is flawed from the beginning. It made an impossible criteria, only the worst of the worst. Nobody knows what that means, the worst of the worst, not your garden variety murder. A criteria that was impossible and fuzzy, and then turned the discretion over to prosecutors. If you don't have a prosecutor that seeks death at the trial from square one, nobody dies. They made it was flawed from the beginning. The penal system has had a flaw in it from the beginning, that what you do is you punish people. And we got to go back and start re-examining things, starting with the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve sinned. God's the one who punishes people. God pushed them out of the garden, punished them. We punish people in prison. We got to rethink. The whole image of God is under this. You want a litmus test of how people think about God? Is God that wrathful one that wants that pound of flesh? Wants that life for life? Is that God, or is that the ogre of our imagination, our projections, of our anger? We got a lot of work to do, but we're doing it. It's beginning to happen. The death penalty now is down to a few counties where you got these rabid prosecutors that want to cut notches on their belt to get another death penalty. But look, state after state is doing away with it. And please God, with Biden, we'll also abolish it at the federal level. Look at what happened. You want to show the flaw in the way the Gregg decision of the Supreme Court set up the death penalty? Just look what Trump did with Attorney General William Barr. He decided, because he had the discretion, that he was going to kill 13 people. And he did. Simply because the discretion was up to him to kill or not, even though nobody had killed anybody on the federal death row in 17 years. Up to him, I want to kill him, he did. We got to change the system. Dorothy Day, I love what she said, and Dismas House represents this. We have to build a society where it's easier for people to be good.
Sister Helen, a comment was made off air about how sensitive Dead Man Walking is, not just to the people who have caused harm, but to the surviving family members. And I'm wondering if you can share with us some of the work you've done with victims or people who've been harmed by serious crime.
Yeah, first I made a mistake. Because when I took the first man on death row, and even the way I began to write Dead Man Walking, if I hadn't had that editor at Random House, Jason Epstein, to help me shape the story, nobody would have read or heard of Dead Man Walking. I was so into the human rights of the one being executed, and Jason said to me, "You wait far too long before you even mention the crime of the victim's family." And it's because I didn't know what to do. I was scared of them, and I had stayed away from them. And he said, if you don't put the crime and the suffering of these families, these two teenage kids killed in cold blood, nobody's going to read your book. And I had to acknowledge the big mistake by not reaching out to them because I was scared of them. Jason said to me, I kind of in the first draft of Demi Walk, I kind of said, well, you know, I never done it before. And he says, you're kind of letting yourself off easy, aren't you? He said, it was cowardice, wasn't it? You were scared. I said, yeah. He said, well, look, when you write your story and you talk about the victim's family, talk about your mistakes. So I did it all wrong. I stayed away. Then as I began to meet them, I then began to reach out, and then we started a group in New Orleans. They needed help. They were all alone. They had nobody to help them heal. And, you know, it was just, so boy, you want to talk about a learning experience. That's been one for me. And I did it wrong before I got it right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to ask a question that's something that I have been wrestling with. And it's perhaps a somewhat existential question. And it is, do we have an innate human desire for punishment, or do we have an innate human desire for accountability? And we've somehow mixed up those two things. Curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Accountability and also safety. See, once you can explain to people that you're going to be safe, that people are not going to get out of prison in a few years and kill again, that satisfies most people. And the way the politicians got away with bringing the death penalty in was to make people so afraid. These people are not just ordinary people, almost like a different species. They're killers. They were born that way, and they can never change. So we see the awakening in the country in a lot of ways now to just say, actually, we don't want to punish people and inflict pain on people. The deepest connection in human beings is that connection of compassion. We are made to be connected. We are made to love each other. But when you have a society that's made afraid and then separated, executions are secret rituals, only a few witnesses. That's why my being thrown into it, why I have the moral imperative to come out and tell people the story. Same thing for people in prison, to tell the stories and to invite people in and to build bridges, connections of real people that can meet with people in prison, or even better, those getting out. There's this group, Witness to Innocence, in the country. These are all people who were wrongfully put on death row, managed to get out, and they tell their stories. When if we can get people to tell their stories to us, we know we built for compassion. We're not, because once we put ourselves in the position of being the punisher, we have removed ourselves in a way from the human race and made ourselves lord over others. They deserve this. And a separation happens that dehumanizes us.
Your friend Rita has posted a question. Tell us about meeting Bud Welch and the Oklahoma bomber that killed his daughter and many others.
Bud Welch is one of the ending stories in Death of Innocence, where I talk about accompanying two people execution who were innocent. Bud Welch, he's a great human being, and I love to be in his company. We went to Moscow together, and he teased me about drinking vodka with the Russians. And he teases me about a lot of stuff because we're friends. And his journey, which when you look at it, his daughter, Julie Marie, whom he loved, he had lunch with her every Wednesday. I mean, what's better than when your child grows up to be an adult and you get to be adult friends? And he was at his gas station in Oklahoma City when somebody ran into the station and said, "The bomb." Everybody heard it. Shattered glass all over the city. The bomb. It was at the Morrison. Isn't that where Julie works? And of course, he rushed down there. And I mean, if you go to that memorial and you just see the shattering of that building, 168 human beings killed, a number of them children. And the memorial is the chairs that people once sat in, and little bitty chairs for the children, other chairs. So Bud's journey begins, stands there. I want to kill Timothy McVeigh with my own hands. He would go to every court proceeding to watch. He said, "I'm glad they had a bulletproof vest on him when they got out of the police car, because I would have killed him with my own hands or with a gun." And then he sees what's happening to him. He's smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day. He's drinking to get going in the morning. He's drinking at night. And he said, "I'm destroying myself." He was listening to the radio one day, and he remembered being in the car with Julie. And they were talking about executions. Another execution had happened in Texas. And he remembered Julie had said to him, "Dad, aren't they just imitating the killing by executing the people? And I'm not for the death penalty. Are you, Dad?" And then he realizes that to honor Julie, he cannot honor her life and who she was by asking for the death penalty for Timothy McVeigh. And he was the first victim's family to stand and say it publicly. And he said, everybody thought I was crazy. I go to visit with a man on death row in Oklahoma, another innocent one, Richard Glossman. I always stay with Bud and his wife, Lois. And boy, do we have stories. The stories never stop.
2 more questions, I think, and I'm so glad they're posted, and actually picks up a little bit on your last comment. So there's a question about language and labels. And we talk a lot about cons and ex-cons and inmates. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts and maybe some advice for how we should be talking about people.
You know, I want to ask a question. What is a word that we can use other than prisoner, inmate, you know, institution and all? Do you have a word, Bobby?
I talk about people who are incarcerated.
Yeah, they are incarcerated. It's what has happened to them. Yeah.
And I will tell you, Sister Helen, anytime a Vermont newspaper person talks about an inmate or a con, I send them an email. And they're starting to change.
Okay.
So I do think our language is really important.
Yes, thank you for that.
So I am so happy this question was posted, because whenever I moderate a panel, I always ask it, and people always hate me for asking it. But now I get to say it was one of the posted questions. If you could invest in one program to prevent crime or bend the arc or make one systemic change, what do you think that would be?
It would be to reform, revitalize our public school system, that everyone can be educated. Anytime there's been a program in a prison where people can be educated, they change because they realize who they are. Interesting, Louis Brandeis, the first Jewish member of the Supreme Court, when he was reflecting on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, life we get, liberty we get, pursuit of happiness couldn't be more open-ended. And that's written into the Declaration of Independence. And he said, I think what that means is the ability, that education is what opens the petals in our flower to the gifts that we have to understand, make meaning of the world, and then to make our changes in it. That is what I would do.
It's so fascinating that the most effective way to address problems of crime are not directly looking at crime. They're certainly not looking at punishment. It is, as you've suggested, education. I think the president, when he talks about the stimulus bill, should say, this is our #1 crime bill.
I mean, human infrastructure. And look, what is Dismas House? An embodiment of another kind of education. It means educare, draw forth. So every volunteer that steps into Dismas House, everybody here tonight, what's happening with us? It's educating us. It's helping us to understand. And consciousness and conscience, even in our brains, are very connected. And so we come to the marble fiber of who we are as a people, us tonight, that when we come to understand, we see the connection. It's like then that conscience, what are we gonna do? From leaving here tonight, what are we gonna do? Is anything changed in us? Are we more committed? What are we gonna do? The action is calling forth from us. And it's kind of dangerous when your consciousness changes, because if you don't do anything, consciousness, you can get paralyzed. And then it's harder to act right away. Anybody who wants to contribute to Dismas House, you got to write that check tonight. Do it right away. Act right away. Volunteer just right away. Don't wait. You wait, you're going to get paralyzed.
I think your call to action will not go unheeded. So it's kind of amazing that we have Sister Helen Prejean, author of Dead Man Walking. We've heard, obviously, book, motion picture, play, and an opera. And it's pretty remarkable that we get to hear an aria from that opera with Sister Helen present. And maybe we'll get to chat with her just a little bit after the opera is done. So thank you so much for your remarks. And it is now my pleasure to turn over the microphone to the Development Director of Opera North, Maria Lascaris, to introduce the aria.
Thank you so much, Bobby. And Sister Helen, what an honor it is to hear you speak. As Bobby said, my name is Maria Lascaris, and I'm the Development Director for Opera North. And we are thrilled as an organization to join the Hartford Dismas House today and to you, Sister Helen, and lend our voices to the important restorative justice work that you do. This afternoon, you will hear mezzo-soprano Elizabeth Sarian, who will be a member of Opera North's 2021 Resident Artist Program this summer, performing the aria entitled This Journey from the opera Dead Man Walking. Just want to say a little bit about the opera, just to give you some context. I think, Sister Helen, you've talked about your journey in many ways over the course of this afternoon. And so a little bit about the opera. The opera by composer Jake Heggie has a libretto by 4-time Tony Award winner Terrence McNally. It performed in October of 2000 and is the most performed new opera of the 21st century. Based on Sister Helen's memoir, the opera recounts her courageous struggle to provide spiritual guidance to Joseph DeRoche, a condemned Louisiana murderer in the months leading up to his execution. Before we hear from Elizabeth, I just wanted to read a short excerpt from an article by the composer Jake Heggie, who wrote about the opera. And I love this quote or this excerpt. He says, "Why is Sister Helen such an operatic character? Against the enormous background of the prison system, death row, and a man convicted of a monstrous crime, there is this one small woman and her faith, her belief in the individual dignity of every person on earth. She travels this path as a kind of everyman, and it is easy for us to go along. From the security of working with children in the projects, to meeting a convicted killer, then his family, then the families of the murder victims, to an execution chamber. All this propels her to a place of spiritual crisis and ultimate resolution." So in this aria you are about to hear, Sister Helen prays for strength on the difficult journey that she will soon undertake, accompanying Joseph to witness his execution. So I'd also like to read the text of the aria so that you can hopefully more fully understand these important words. So the aria goes like this: this journey to Christ, this journey to my God, this journey to myself, to my Jesus, to this man, to the truth. I'm going to die, he writes me. I haven't a chance. Does he want me to help him to die? Is he afraid of death? What am I afraid of? Death, maybe? And what else? I want to know. This journey to Jesus, to my Christ. Joseph de Roche, 95281. Death, his death, my own. Help me, dearest Jesus, make me strong, make me wise, make me human. Amen. And now, I'd like to present Elizabeth Sarian singing the aria, This Journey.
This journey to Christ, this journey to my God, this journey
That's rather remarkable. Thank you, Maria. Thank you to Ms. Sarian as well. Sister Helen, what are you feeling having heard that? Something you've certainly heard before, but what are your, talk to us.
Yes, well, of course, the last words, make me strong, make me wise, make me human. Amen. And that journey still continues with me. And I guess the question, Bobby, I've been asked the most, what's it like to go to an opera and see yourself? Because, I mean, at the first people who did the opera were freaked out that the Madame Butterfly person was going to be sitting in the audience. They had never had that experience before. But what I say to them is, it's bigger than me. I'm so glad the story and the experience of going from outrage over to witness and execution is bringing a whole other group of human beings into the journey that we wouldn't have if we didn't have opera. And there is nothing more powerful than to have the human heart educated and drawn not simply by live drama on the stage, by music that takes us into places of our hearts we don't even know we have. It is the most powerful art expression I think that's even possible for this kind of journey. And I think that's why it's had such resonance in people.
And what resonates, I mean, the amazing thing about the journey of the book is how it now can resonate with people through so many different mediums. Did you have any idea when you wrote it?
I didn't even know, I mean, I'd never written a book before. With the Gospels have been recently in the epistles that God uses the weak to confound the strong. We just get in there when we wake up and do our little bit, and we have to turn it over. We just have to turn it over and trust. And other hearts awaken. I believe in the goodness of people and give them half a chance to make the journey. And they're going to recognize right away that we shouldn't be entrusting over to our government this right to take people and kill them.
So we actually have a little bit of time, but I guess I would say to you, and Sister Helen, I'm going to go slightly off script. Are there final thoughts, comments that you would like to leave this great audience with as we forge ahead?
Yeah, you know, the more information we get from social media about all the problems of the world, we are overwhelmed in so many ways. We're so conscious now of so much that's wrong with the world and things, and we can be overwhelmed. I do a lot with university students, young people now, look at all they're aware of. And then that call to just be human, that responsibility. And I would just like to point out the power that is in each of us as an individual, not to change the whole world, but maybe to think of it like a big mosaic, and maybe we're the little splash of blue or the one of red, but just to take a hold of it and to do our part. Look at Rita McCaffrey and Mac and the people that have done Dismas. It's 35 years. Think of it. And every one of those members that gets on the council, everyone hearing the words tonight, you are being presented with one of the great moral issues of our day, that we have incarcerated human beings and punished them and thwarted life, and to do your part, of which only you can do, to be a part of the healing and the change that can come, but only when we do it together in community. Isolated, we can't do very much. So it's precious that we've gathered in community to do this tonight with Dismas House as our central gravitational pull.
I cannot thank you enough. The past 2 years have been extraordinarily difficult for this country, for the world. And I know many folks honestly have been really severely adversely impacted, and many folks have let a high degree of pessimism creep into their being. And it is just so inspirational to hear from you, given all that you've done, all that you've seen, to send this message of hope and activism and optimism. And I know that I am deeply touched, as are others. And I just want to thank you so much, and thank everyone associated with Hartford Dismas House and all of the Dismas houses in Vermont and elsewhere for the extraordinary work that they do with human beings who are seeking community and seeking to rejoin and make new connections. So I wish everyone a wonderful evening. Happy Father's Day again to all. Please support Hartford Dismas House, and I hope people enjoy the rest of what is, at least where I am right now, a beautiful evening. So good night, everyone, and peace.